Financial meltdown. 2008 saw stock markets crash, banks go under, and even countries hovering on the edge of bankruptcy. With governments rallying to find the billions needed for bailouts, Amnesty International believes they may be missing the point.
This is not just an economic crisis. It's fundamentally a human rights crisis. We're sitting on a powder keg of injustice, inequality, and insecurity. This is a time bomb of social, political, and economic problems.
Around the world, billions are living without proper shelter, sanitation, or healthcare. 2/3 of the world's population are prisoners of poverty, casualties of a gap in government investment between business and people. 2008 saw demonstrations against food shortages, protests that were brutally suppressed, turning economic recession into political repression. Those who do try to escape to a better life can end up locked up. And some don't survive the journey at all. Millions more are facing discrimination. In Europe, Roma are the largest minority, yet they're often denied access to the shelter, healthcare and schools that could turn their lives around. Governments are putting so much into trying to resolve the economic crisis that little is done to tackle long-running conflicts. From Gaza, where more than 1,400 people, including 300 children, were killed in the recent Israeli attacks. To Afghanistan, where nearly 1/3 people are displaced. To Sudan, where the crisis in Darfur shows no sign of resolution. From Sri Lanka, where hundreds of thousands of civilians are trapped by the fighting with no access to humanitarian aid. To the Democratic Republic of Congo, where millions have died as the result of war and where there's still a massive humanitarian crisis. Amnesty International believes governments have a duty to address these human rights issues and not just focus on economics.
We want to live like any other girl in any country, any other woman or man. We want to live the way they live.
For all of us here, we're now living with the threat of death. If you leave us here, we can do nothing.
And there are new sources of tension, with the conflict between Russia and Georgia and the terrorist attacks in Mumbai. China held the most expensive Olympics ever staged, but also carried out more than 70% of the world's executions, continued to detain political prisoners, and refused to accept dissent.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
As the world's most powerful man was sworn in, Amnesty International celebrated his announcement that Guantanamo is to close. But the US has still to fully investigate suspected abuses that took place in the name of the war on terror.
There we go.
And prosecute those responsible. One prosecution already underway is that of the Congolese armed group leader Thomas Lubanga, the International Criminal Court's first war crimes trial, and a demonstration that the international community can act on human rights. But Amnesty International believes that the world's richest nations cannot solve the world's economic and environmental problems without recognizing that human rights are at the heart of the solution.
There's a lot of talk now about how governments have to fix the economic system, how governments have to get the economy back on its feet, how markets have to be fixed. What we are saying as Amnesty International is that when you do that fixing, don't just go back to what things were before, because there were major human rights problems. You need to fix them too, and this is a real opportunity to get the state once more on its feet, but on its feet for human rights, recognizing that obligations for human rights are as important as the economy.
Millions around the world want this to be the start of a new era. Amnesty International wants that new era to bring a new deal on human rights. People demand no less.